there's no doubt that jump scares have become a staple in modern horror films and video games, I'd like to share my perspective on why I don't find them to be a legitimate representation of true horror. Before diving into my reasoning, I want to clarify that jump scares, when used correctly, can indeed enhance the horror experience. They can add tension, surprise, and excitement to a scene, making an audience momentarily leap from their seats. However, I believe that relying on jump scares as the primary method of eliciting fear is a shortcut that detracts from the essence of what horror truly is. To understand why I hold this view, let's first explore the difference between being startled and being scared. Startling someone is a reflexive response. It's a momentary jolt of surprise that's driven by an immediate, unexpected stimulus, like a loud noise or a sudden movement. When a jump scare happens, your brain reacts almost instantly. Your heart rate spikes, adrenaline's released, and your body prepares for a fight or flight response. This reaction is rooted in our evolutionary biology, a survival mechanism designed to protect us from sudden dangers. However, this reaction is fundamentally different from the feeling of fear. Fear is a deeper and more pervasive emotion. It's not just a brief moment of surprise, but rather an unsettling sense that something is terribly wrong. Fear lingers in the mind, creating a sense of dread that can persist long after the stimulus is gone. True horror taps into this primal fear. It's about creating an atmosphere that slowly builds tension, planting the seeds of anxiety and uncertainty in the mind of the audience. When we talk about the physiological response to fear versus being startled, it's important to delve into how our brain processes these experiences. Being startled is a sudden, involuntary reaction governed by the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for detecting threats and triggering our body's immediate survival instincts. This is why when something jumps out at us, our body reacts before we even have time to think about it. But this reaction is short-lived. Once the stimulus is gone, the body quickly returns to a state of normalcy. In contrast, true fear involves the cerebral cortex, the thinking part of the brain. This is where we process complex emotions and scenarios, where we imagine what could be lurking in the dark, where we build narratives around the unknown. True fear isn't about an immediate reaction, but about the ongoing, gnawing sense of unease that something's out there waiting. It's the fear of what we can't see, what we can't understand, and most importantly, what we are unable to control. Horror, in its purest form, is an exploration of the unknown. It's a genre that thrives on ambiguity, psychological tension, and the slow unraveling of what we believe to be true. Great horror doesn't rely on startling the audience. It engages the mind, pulling us deeper into a world where the boundaries between reality and nightmare blur. It's the kind of fear that seeps into your bones, that keeps you up at night thinking about what might be The Shining or The Exorcist. These films aren't remembered for a barrage of jump scares, unlike modern horror. They're remembered for their ability to create a lingering sense of dread. In Psycho, the horror comes not from a sudden loud noise, but from the unsettling realization that Norman Bates is not what he seems. The tension builds gradually as the audience becomes more and more aware of the twisted reality hidden beneath the surface. In The Shining, it's the eerie, almost suffocating atmosphere of the Overlook Hotel, combined with Jack Torrance's descent into madness, that creates a sense of horror. The fear isn't in the sudden appearance of ghosts, but in the slow, inevitable unraveling of the human psyche. The Exorcist is terrifying because it taps into deep-seated fears about religion, possession, and the loss of control over one's own body and soul. The horror here isn't in sudden shocks, but in the overwhelming sense of helplessness in the face of an unknowable evil. These examples highlight that true horror is about creating an experience that resonates on a deeper psychological level. It's about crafting a story, an atmosphere, and characters that draw the audience in and make them feel the terror in their bones. Jump scares, in contrast, are often a quick and easy way to elicit a reaction, but they lack the substance needed to create lasting fear. They're momentary, fleeting, and often forgettable once the initial shocks worn off. Moreover, the overuse of jump scares can have a numbing effect on the audience. When a horror film relies too heavily on these sudden shocks, it can desensitize viewers, making each subsequent scare less effective. This over-reliance on jump scares can also detract from the overall narrative and atmosphere, breaking the immersion and reducing the experience to a series of disconnected jolts. In the end, the film becomes more of a roller coaster ride than a journey into the heart of darkness. There's also the matter of predictability. Jump scares often follow a formula: a quiet moment, a slow build-up, and then the sudden scare. Once the audience becomes familiar with the pattern, the effectiveness of the jump scare diminishes. The fear is no longer genuine. It becomes an expectation, something anticipated rather than something that catches you off guard. True horror, on the other hand, is unpredictable. It plays with your expectations, subverts them, and keeps you on edge because you never quite know what's coming next. In examining the science behind why jump scares are less effective at creating true horror, it's important to consider the concept of habituation. Habituation is the process by which our response to a stimulus decreases with repeated exposure. When we experience a jump scare, our body's initial reaction is strong, but if we're exposed to similar stimuli repeatedly, our reaction diminishes. This is why a film filled with jump scares often becomes less scary as it progresses. Our brain begins to expect the scare. The impact is therefore reduced. On the other hand, such a powerful genre. True horror requires skillful storytelling, the creation of atmosphere, and a deep understanding of the human psyche. It's about knowing how to manipulate light and shadow, sound and silence, to create an experience that's both immersive and terrifying. It's about understanding the fears that lie beneath the surface of our consciousness and bringing them to life in a way that feels real, tangible, and deeply unsettling. To craft true horror, filmmakers and writers must dig deeper, exploring the themes and ideas that tap into our most primal fears. They need to create characters that we care about, so that when they're threatened, we feel that fear as if it were our own. They need to build worlds that feel real, where the rules of reality are bent just enough to make us question what's possible. They need to use subtlety and restraint, understanding that sometimes what's left unseen is far more terrifying than what's shown. Jump scares, when overused, can feel like a cop-out, a way to elicit a reaction without putting in any of the needed effort to build fear. Ultimately, horror is about more than just making people jump in their seats. It's about exploring the darker aspects of the human experience, the fears that lie just beneath the surface of our everyday lives. It's about confronting the unknown, the mysterious, and the terrifying in a way that leaves a lasting impression. Jump scares may provide a momentary thrill, but they don't have the depth or staying power to create the kind of fear that lingers long after the lights come back on. So while jump scares can be an effective tool when used sparingly and in the right context, they shouldn't be relied upon as the primary means of creating horror. The difference between being startled and being scared is profound, and true horror lies in the ability to tap into the deeper, more enduring aspects of fear. Horror is not about the